welcome to Kiki's Chat Show. I haven't been around for a while, but I'm back. So much has happened, and so much has been scary. We're all in a situation where we're a little bit scared, but we're still boxing on though. But we're walking with trepidation. My colleague here calls it something else. I can't quite remember, but you always describe living on this earth at the moment as
on a wobbly earth.
we are
all
on
of us in and
wobbly
on a wobbly earth.
Wobbly earth. My people, I have very interesting. I have an interesting group for my guests today, and we're going to dive straight in because what we're going to talk about is so serious that we don't want to waste even a minute. We're talking about the cost of living crisis in the world. Now, when I say the world, our world is many places, but it's mostly the UK, America, and Ghana. Of course, all African countries are also in the world because Africa is the place to be. However, this is what we're talking about. My first guest is Mr. Ade Sawyer, Equinox Consulting Management. He promotes economic and social advancement for socially excluded communities in the UK. He's a social commentator who promotes Black culture wherever he can, and is a cultural critic of the Gadangme people of Ghana, helping to form many organizations researching the culture and tradition to bring them into the millennium, especially for the younger diaspora generation. My next guest is Brenya Twumasi. She is in several fields. This is somebody who is in law. She's a professor, actually, professor, I should say, of law, psychology, and criminal justice. She's a founder and director of Tacticalops. I always find it difficult to pronounce it. And she's a lover of Christmas season, a mummy, and a MuMa. One day, I'll tell you an anecdote. One day, her grandson looked at her lovingly and said, "MuMa, you are my best friend." So that is one of the positives of life, to have a full life and to be able to. And today, my guests are people who are very close to my heart. One of the kindest and most patient people is Mr. Ade Sawyer. He is patient to me. He is kind to me. He explains things to me. And then my best friend in the whole wide world is Dr. Twumasi, who is also, she's got my back. So, just look at it that way. Today we're discussing the very interesting situation that we're in on this planet at the moment. One of the things that's happening in the UK where we are, and America where the professor is there are strikes everywhere. There are proposed strikes. There are strikes going on. The trains have stopped. The tubes are stopping left, right, and center. Nurses will be going on strike, which has never happened in the UK before. Barristers went on strike a few months ago. Everyone is going on strike. Why? Because everything has gone up. Our fuel, our food, we can't afford anything. Not to mention our mortgages, our rents, even clothes have gone up. Now, today we're going to try and thrash out what it means when you say there is a crisis, a cost of living crisis. We're also going to try and talk about how it affects our countries. And then we're going to talk about ways in which we can try and deal with it. I'm not saying overcome it, because us, the normal people of this world, are the people who are suffering. The rich people are not suffering. It doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. So we have to find ways to survive in this tough situation. Welcome to Kiki's Chat Show. Ade Sawyer, you're the first person I'm going to ask a question to, and it is, what is the main cause of the cost of living crisis?
I just have to sigh first before I try to answer, because there are sort of varied causes of this. I mean, I can't quite put my hand on one, but obviously there's an issue about, we had COVID, which changed the world considerably. We have the war in Ukraine, which has changed Europe a little bit, and I think we have to deal with it. For me, I think the major problem is the COVID pandemic. And I think normally when people get into things that change their lives considerably, there's the emergency, and then you have to go through the emergency into the recovery, and then into the recovery, you then need to go into a period of adjustment into what one would call a new normal. I think what has happened in this case is we just went through that emergency, we recovered, and we really haven't gone into a new normal. We've gone back to the old normal. So people are doing things they did before the pandemic now. So in this country, there were many people who became rich as a result of COVID. And the government in the UK took good care of us during that pandemic period. People didn't need to go to work. A lot of people were paid for staying at home doing nothing. And obviously, they came out of COVID, instead of adjusting to that new normal and doing things in a hybrid way. I think we started spending money like crazy. So that fueled a little bit of inflation. And before we realized, and of course, the backdrop for us in the UK is this issue of Brexit, which is also a little bit of a toxic mix. I think the government probably spent a little bit too much money than they should have. So of course, tail end, just when we thought that we'll get into a new normal, the war hits in Ukraine. And obviously, whenever there's wartime, there's crisis. And then perhaps this issue of the new change in government and the little bit of flurry about the financial markets, that all affected us. So really what's happening is that things have become a lot more expensive than they were this time last year. And fuel prices have gone up, and the government has to look after us again. So the government is probably spending a lot more money. Now,
you mean the UK government?
In the UK. I mean, I'll refer to Africa later on. But I think in the UK government has to spend a lot more money. The UK government is lucky because it has that money. But anytime the government spends money, it fuels inflation. So we are caught in a situation where prices have gone up and where people now have to worry about staying at home and dealing with their fuel costs. I mean, Russia is punishing the West for supporting Ukraine, and all that is happening. But there's a little bit of resilience in the West, so they can afford all the adjustments that they are making. So that's my take on it in terms of looking at the UK. And I'll deal with that first. I'll hear Brenya speak first before I tackle the issue of Africa.
Brenya, what is your view when you talk about this situation in America? Because I know that in America there's high speculation, not necessarily about what we are dealing with the now in the UK, but America, you seem to be dealing with the future. You're talking about something that's going to happen, lights out, this and that. You know, you're even afraid of war. You feel that there's a war coming towards you, and the war is in Europe. So, what is your take on this
Okay. So I have
crisis?
to ask permission. Should I be graceful or should I be bold?
Be bold. Be
Be
bold.
bold. Okay.
You
So
see, one of the things is this particular platform is for people who are a little bit quizzical about what is happening. They're
okay.
not sure what is going on, and they need to get a broader view of
Okay.
what's going on, which then allows them to ask specific questions. Do you
Okay.
see what I mean? So
That's right.
please be
Okay,
bold.
so being bold, I'm going to annoy some people, but
Oh,
I
that's
do
fine.
think that it's my responsibility to be so. And Ade Sawyer, big respect to you. You know that I'm your biggest fan other than Candy. So I'm going to go right back. I'm going to mention a number of things, given my practitioner work and my scholarly work for 30 years. So I'm going to talk on behalf of those of us who know this, since Candy's given me the platform to do so. So, first of all, the United States of America, everyone should be clear about this, is the child of the United Kingdom. So, please understand that.
Hmm?
And the
Okay.
United States of America is the child of the United Kingdom, and they work together always. And that's why United Kingdom was able to call upon the US to come and support within the Second World War. And the US did because the mother was calling. So please understand this. Remember, Candy, I said I'm going to upset a few people. So we were all born into, and this is not my opinion, this is theory based on a lot of work. We were all born into the one world order. Okay, that's going to upset a lot of people. And I'm going to talk about banks. From what Ade Sawyer was saying, I'm going to explain something so that my grandson can understand. So we were all born into one world order because the Allies were willing to sign anything that the child of the UK was wrote up with fantastic lawyers. And so there we have, I'll go real quick with that so you have a little basis. We had the World Bank in Washington, D.C., where I worked. We have the United Nations in New York. We sent International Court of Justice to the Netherlands, my mother's land, because they were a peaceful country, so to speak. And then we had the World Health Organization in the Underground Railroad land that wants to stay out of everything, Switzerland. And we, as the United States, the Allies signed, and the One World Order was actually formed then. People don't realize that. But once I say it, I think people begin to say, wow, yeah. I won't go into all the details of that because I could write a book on all those aspects for real. So now we fast forward, Candy, to today. So I want to explain that part of my studies in law school, which was a long time ago, decades ago, had to do with this, had to do with what's going on in Ukraine. Because I had a fantastic professor, I was an African girl who was busy about my business, trying to survive, really trying to survive. And this wonderful, brilliant professor who's passed away, respect to him, did a brain dump on me. And I didn't know what was going on then. So it was way back in the 80s that I found out what I'm about to tell you. And it's connected to Russia and Ukraine. That's why I asked you if I should be bold, because a lot of
Yeah,
people will be
people.
upset with me. Okay. So fast forward to me telling everybody in my circle who really wants truth, because a lot of people don't want truth, that if we watch commerce, ports, and banks, we know where all the conflict is. 3 words: commerce, ports, and banks. Now, legally, ports, commerce, and banks have a lot accordion out of that. So I won't go into that. But what I'm going to do now, Candy, and then I'll give it over to Day. So I'm going to explain this. You see, the banks were created to house the money of, say, who we respect the most, the farmers. I teach this in the classroom. So the farmers are the wealthiest because without food, we perish. We really respect the farmers. And the banks held the farmers' money because the farmers weren't into that trade. Okay, So now we have the banks, and there are a few, I'm not going to name them, but you can research a few, maybe 4 world banks, right? Barclays is one of them. I said I wasn't going to name them, but Barclays is one. And the banks are the ones that have the top committee members, council members who determine things, with the Federal Reserve, which is actually not federal, right? Okay. So the banks need for you, Candy, for me, Brenya, and for our wonderful Ade Sawyer to be in debt. 100%. Because the banks sit back and get the interest rate from our credit cards, the interest rate from our mortgages, our rent, the landlords. That's what they get. And so that's why the leaders say, oh, it's Christmas season, go out and shop. Because the credit cards need to be flowing. But what they don't want, where Ade Sawyer and I may differ here, they do not want Ade Sawyer, Kiki, Candy, Brenya to default on the mortgage or default on the credit card. So that's when they say, stop. Don't spend so much because you're about to default and they won't get anything from you. That's enough there, but a couple of books can be written about that. So that's why you're encouraged to go according to the balance, go out and spend. No, don't go out and spend. Because the banks are the most important in terms of how the world runs and the economy runs. And they need you 100% to be in debt, not to be debt-free. They need you to be in debt. So you can ask me questions about that because I have a lot of information on that, but I'll pass it on to who I respect greatly, Ade Sawyer.
Right. So basically, my question to either of you is, if that is the case, when we're talking about being in crisis, in America, you haven't got to the crisis point yet. You're just being propelled into huge debt before you get to your crisis.
I have an answer if you're asking me. We've had for quite a while a homeless situation in certain areas of the United States, and professionals are homeless as well in places that the listening audience may be aware of: Los Angeles, San Francisco, parts of Oregon, a little bit in Austin, Texas. And why we see more homeless there is because it's warm. Note the warmth of Los Angeles compared to Minnesota. San Francisco is warm, right? Compared to Canada. And so we see it. And so, no, the wealthy are affected, very much so, more than you know. But they have to put on a upper chin, right? Shoulders back, chin up.
Okay. Now, my next question is to Ade Sawyer, which is, the way that you explained it, you would think that the situation should stay in Europe and we will suffer, especially the UK, because we went into Brexit. However, Africa, for example, Ghana, the president has told them that the reason why things are expensive, fuel is expensive, is because of the war. Also, food is expensive. Corn, which is something that we use for our kenke, banku, and all of these things, have shot up. The size of kenke has gone smaller and yet is more expensive. So how does that affect them? They're not Brexiting. They haven't done any Brexit. And I thought that our corn or millet was grown in Africa. So what is our problem, and why have we become so dependent on Europe that if there's a war in Europe, we're going to starve in Africa? How is that possible? It doesn't work. I mean, make me understand it.
Brenya talked about this conspiracy between banks, finance courts, and commerce. I mean, it's not something I believe in, because I've never believed in a unipolar world. I've always believed in a multipolar world. And I think that the Cold War created a lot of confusion. And I think that we are resolving the war in Ukraine. It's probably as a result of the muted way in which Russia has carried its affairs and is now flexing its its muscles, and China will follow soon to continue to flex their muscles. And this is all because America thinks it's great. America is not that great. People like us do not believe that America is the font of democracy or what Americans think about. So I just totally discount that. I don't think that America, what happens in America, affects anybody anywhere in the world. Americans like to think that it's a sham, totally, from my point of view. Now let me go back to the backdrop of Africa. Okay. Whenever there's a war anywhere, it affects things everywhere. So it is true what our president says. The war in Ukraine has created a problem for us in Africa, as did the COVID, because we can't quite forget that there was a long period of almost 2 years when things happened differently. The reaction to COVID from England was that they would go into quantitative easing and try and support people. And they did spend a lot of money. I don't know whether you forgot about what we call Rishi dishes, where you could even dine on the state. What's happening in America is that they are in some sort of denial. COVID affected them in such a drastic way. But America has never really been a country of equality. It's better in the UK in terms of how our government takes care of the people, because I think England or UK is a more equitable place to live in. Now let's go to Africa. I think if we look at Ghana, maybe our leaders or successive leaders have bought into this syndrome of America being the best thing since sliced bread. So they've followed that economic orthodoxy. And it's all been proved to all of us that is a total sham. So they've borrowed more than they should.
Ade, can we switch to sort of a little bit of a debate? Do you mind?
To what?
A little bit of a debate, because he keeps on repeating America's sham, and I'm saying that the UK actually is the mother of this sham.
No.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you, except that part. The UK, with the colonization that it does now, with the plans that they do. There's a lot to say about that.
What I actually want to talk about is the fact that African leaders, some of them, have bought into this kind of sham about people controlling other people, and I don't buy into it.
It's corruption. They know what they're doing. They know that they want the money.
Yeah, but
they haven't bought into anything. They just want a lot of money in their bank account. And we don't want to talk about our classmates right now.
No. Whatever it is that people do is their problem. Okay? Whatever people do is their problem.
But the leaders, they're the leaders.
Whatever the leaders do,
they are the government. Our classmates are the government.
You know something, I'm sorry. We keep on blaming leaders. What about the followers? Because you can't be a leader when nobody is following you.
We actually agree. I've written a lot of articles about that. So the leaders come from us.
So if you start talking about leaders and everything, I mean, that again I'll debunk, because most followers would like to be like the leaders. Also,
we're talking. We're on the same page, Ade. We're on the same page. Because I've written a lot of articles about the leaders come from you. They're your children. The leaders are the people.
Yes, but we are talking about it from a different perspective, and that perspective is that America, Europe, there's no unipolar world. NATO won't be able to do anything against Russia.
And I'm nodding because I'm agreeing with you.
There's been an age-old issue that is happening. Britain doesn't have too much money now. It's almost become a satellite state of the Arab countries and the rest of the world, China included. So I can't see Britain leading anybody and America being the child of this.
Actually, we're in agreement. Ade Sawyer, we're in agreement. I know you very well, and we're actually in agreement.
I want to take the issue into Africa, because it's Africa which is interesting. Okay. What is interesting about Africa for me is that we have very intelligent people who run our countries, highly intelligent people. They don't, but they've actually bought into a particular view of the world. They are not as bold as probably you are. They think that you need to do something that the West dictates. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to do all the necessary things that they should do in order for Africa to develop. So to that extent, I'm not looking at party politics or anything. I'm just saying that people who wanted to run governments have not helped us. And I'm not talking about now, I'm not talking about the political leaders, people in political parties. I'm actually talking about anybody, whether they took the gun or they won the votes at the election, have not looked after their people. When you go into countries like the Arab world, the people who run government think first about their countries. When you go to places like China, the first thing they do is to think about their people and how they are going to uplift their people out of poverty so that there's probably more equality. And I'm saying that in the case of Ghana, what is happening is that there was a time when people thought there was going to be a boom. And so they borrowed to the hills, and there was a bust as a result of certain things. And they are now struggling to come to terms with that particular orthodoxy. So I won't blame a political leader or anything. I'll blame the people. And I'll say to the people that now perhaps is the time again for community and social mobilization, that we can do things in spite of our governments, that we can actually develop in spite of whatever bad, visionless leadership our governments have been provided. And we can do things from small local spaces in order for us to be able to transform the communities in which we live. I'm depressed anytime I go to Ghana and I go outside Accra, or I go into certain parts of Accra that have actually been turned into slums within a 50-year period. So those are the things that I really want to think about. I sympathize with anybody who wants to run a government in Africa because it's not easy, right? And I think that all those people who probably go in and think that what they are doing is corruption would in the end pay in some way. Maybe they're not going to pay through the courts, because I hear that the judges and everything are exchanging snails and what do you call it, eggs or whatever it is, in order for them to come up with decent court judgments. And that really it's something that is it's like the intellectual people and the intelligent people have been totally paralyzed because they've not been able to think about themselves and have a world view which shows that they can do better than they are doing now.
A listener has just said that if we can develop in spite of our governments, then we do not need those governments, because we spend a lot of money paying the government and we can put the money to better use if we don't have them. Now, would that not create chaos and anarchy if there are no structures? Or are we going to create structures where there is no need for a minister going into parliament, but we will go back to our chieftaincies and...
No. Don't start that crap about chieftaincy
it's
at
a
all.
question.
Don't start that crap about chieftaincy at all. Okay? Now, people, I come from a part of Ghana, Accra, where we meet the chiefs, where the head of the household is the person who dictates or who supervises things, right? The chief is just, how would I say, a little bit of a celebrity who we've put somewhere. The real role of a chief is to go to war. We no longer have any wars in Africa. So really,
we could well have wars now.
No, not that type of war. No, no, we may have political wars. I think tribal wars have gone. Yeah, we've had a state, and people forget what Nkrumah did for Ghana, in terms of turning Ghana into a country where we were all able to cohabit and were
Yeah.
able to do things properly. So that kind of tribal war with this chief saying this or this, all that will happen is that somebody will take the chief's tool and he will probably run away or take their sandals and that kind of. So let's actually not talk about traditional leadership at
Okay.
all.
It was a yes.
No. Now I'll answer the question. We've always thrived on community development.
Mm.
That is what is developed our country anywhere. Nobody needed a chief to tell them to go to the cocoa farms, to go and weed, to go and plant trees. People did that because it was something that they would do in order for them to be able to look after their children. Why do you need a government? For the government to control what happens in terms of development and enterprise? We did that in modern times because we found a particular system of government that was left for us by the British. And we did not do enough to be able to actually make adjustments to that type of government so that it will suit us. The imperative in Africa is jobs and development. And I'm saying that we can still do that without waiting for government to do that for us. And that's the deficit for us in Africa. In our minds of intelligent people, they think that somebody has to give you a job before you can live.
But what would you call that then? What kind of structure would that be? Because forget the chieftaincy. I wish
It
I had
doesn't.
listened to
It
that.
doesn't have to be. It
Is it
doesn't
as
have to be a
man?
job. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a. It doesn't have to be the kind of political system. We can develop our own political system. Look, let me give you the example of Tanzania. They went into multi-party politics. They went into one-party politics. They've gone back into multi-party politics. There are things that evolve all the time to suit the development of the people. We can't just have something imposed. We can actually work it out. We are matured enough to actually sit down and say that this is what happened. As a young man, when I helped start the Accra Newtown Development Association, which was trying to hold AMA to account for the development and for doing sanitation and things like that in Accra Newtown, I didn't need anybody's permission to do that. I got my old headmaster who called me. There was a guy, Mr. Shadow, who said that, look, this place is getting rough. Ade can't be our secretary. Let's go to AMA and let's go. And came to my father. My father said, look, I'll give you my son. And I went and I helped. And we're going to AMA on a weekly basis, setting them tasks. We didn't need anybody to tell us that. At that period in time, there was no politics in Ghana. At that period in time, there was the strong man, Achampon, who had taken the gun without thinking about the consequences. And I started running the country. So what I'm saying is that all these things are, we need to be able to think in order for us
Outside the box,
to be able to develop in two boxes. People say outside the box. We need to be able to think in multiple boxes in order for us to come up with a solution to our problems, because our problems are different, because we live in a different time. Europe developed in a different time, so they developed with different theories. We are now in probably the millennium, and we are still thinking that we should follow exactly what it is that made Europe develop, or what it is that made Russia develop. Okay. And then we forget that there's a cultural content to our development, that most of the things that we do, most of the things that we think are foreign to us. So if we don't think about our culture and what suits our culture, how can we develop? How can we develop to meet the needs of our people, to meet the desires of our people? We can't.
But okay, I need to ask you this
You
very
see where I'm
important
coming
question.
from?
I do see where you are coming from, and to
Yeah.
me, it's beginning to sound utopia-ish because you see, there are situations in place where when a head of state or certain governments are trying to do well and think about their country, only in Africa, by the way, suddenly the head of state is dead, or something has happened, or there is a coup. It seems as if we need to continue to kowtow and suck up to Europe and America just for survival. They don't want us to plant our own corn, so we have to import it from elsewhere. This
That's you see, the bit that I don't understand is
mm,
that somebody does not want us to do something. That is the bit that I do not understand. Okay, let's be clear. Okay, there was something called the international demonstration effect, that there was a time that we wanted to be like the white man because we thought that that was the highest form of our culture. That was partly because the white man lived with us and they imposed certain things on us. It was our chiefs who gave them permission to do that. When we became independent in Ghana specifically, there was a mood to change that. That mood was resisted by a lot of people who had bought into that international demonstration effect, that we have to do things in a particular way. But what I'm suggesting is that we have such a rich culture from which we can evolve what it is that we want to do. And we don't want to do that. And it's because we don't want to do that,
We do
because we
want to
don't
do
want to
that.
buck
We
the
do.
trend. It is nobody is imposing anything on us.
but
We
we
want to follow that international demonstration, then effect. Look, when China closed its borders and went on a cultural revolution that people said failed, which I think did not fail because that was the emergence of China. When China did that, people talked, but China didn't care two hoots. And now China is beating the West in all the things that we thought were Western.
but if that is
So
the case,
come on, let's be real. Let's start thinking about what it is that our needs are. We are Africans, for Christ's sake. We are not Europeans.
of
We are,
course,
we are not Americans. We are
Well,
of
Africans.
course.
Let's think about the things that makes the African proud, and let's do those things.
If that is the case, then should we start? Okay, the question is, so how do we, especially question is to Brenya, if you
thank you.
agree and you are with what
Thank you.
um Ade is saying,
Yeah, I can jump
how
in.
how do you think that
Okay,
we're
so I,
gonna be Africa?
all right. So I'm being careful here with Ade because his background is similar to mine, where family members have worked on this issue since before the white man came. So I'm going to be very careful. But I want the audience to know that on most of what he says, I fully agree. However, you have to be patient Ade with me, because when I wake up in the morning to when I go to bed, I'm working on projects in Ghana. People assume I'm not. And I was a professor at Shishi University, and I work in the interior as well when I go home. And I work from here as well. So let me tell you this. The advantage I have, like Ade has and like Candy has, is we were born into families that were doing this work before the white man came to the shores. So what I disagree with greatly is our people. How I define, when I did economics, right? Well, how I define our people is like how Ade does. But our people are independent, and our people are in the north, and our people is the Volta region, our people are in the east and west, and our people are in Cape Coast, and they are working hard. However, and I'm being bold on this because it's serious. However, when they need support, such as commercial trucks to bring the cocoa that they do not eat to the shorelands, that's when they need the leaders amongst them, which they do have and who we know actually, to get the commercial trucks in time to get the cocoa across. Just as one example, there's many examples I can give, and articles that I have written over the years and work I have done with the people. And they need, like Kiki was intimating, they need the leaders. The leaders could be in the household because they come from the people. However, the leaders need to actually get the tarred roads, the rocks. They need to put the roads out, and they need help with that. And that's how the people become the government. I'm walking on eggshells right now because Ade may be thinking something else, but that's how government, maybe I said, that's how government is formed from our people in the north, in Bolagatanga, in Joaso, in Joabin, in Odumasi, in Kibi. The leaders are there, and that's how governments are formed. But the word government, the English word, has become a dirty word, and so people are losing their minds. Now, China is always on a 50-year plan, 100-year plan, 100%. And so, no, they're not just now becoming interested in the continent of Africa and our nations and Ghana. They were interested a long time ago based on data-driven. And we don't have enough time to delve into all of that. However, there are many misconceptions. Now, the US is not a democracy. We teach that. It is not a democracy. It's a republic. And people need to understand, if they have questions, ask them. They need to understand what a democracy is, which the US has never said it's a democracy. It has always said it's a republic. This is the Republic of America. And it's totally different. So people are always spouting information that helps us to fall off the cliff because it's not true information. It's never been a democracy. It's a capitalistic nation, 100% overt, and a republic. Greece was a true democracy. Ghana is not really democracy. And I'm not going to even touch the issue of chieftaincy because Ade is going to get upset. But there's a lot there as well before the white man came to our shores. When we came on our canoes and took over some lands. So that's enough to keep it. There's so much information to give. We don't have enough time. I'm watching the time. We have like about 5 minutes. So I give it over. But there's so much more to share.
Well,
not opinion.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think when we start talking about a plan for development, we've had many plans for development over in Africa. And most of the plans we've needed to go and borrow money from outside the country. And I think that it's only when we go on this borrowing spree that somebody tells us what to do. Okay. When I talk about vision, I talk about a different type of vision. Okay. I mean, I always probably make reference to a vision that one man in Africa had, Kwame Nkrumah, which meant that in 1948, 47, even before he came to Ghana, he had written a little pamphlet towards colonial freedom. And he was looking at not just political independence, but he was actually looking at social independence and eventually how we would get into our economic independence. And he did a lot of things which a lot of orthodoxies disagreed with.
You're talking about a politician now, by the way. You've gone away from the people. You're talking about a politician right now.
No. He wasn't. Nkrumah started as a community organizer. Nkrumah never really wanted to become a politician. He was running the committee of youth organizations with other people. It was just that there was agitation for independence. When he came, he never really expected that he was going to lead the country. He came and met other people. He worked with them. He realized that those other people would probably replicate the same stuff that our colonial masters were doing. And he thought that there was a reason or there was an urgency about doing something different. So he tried to do those things. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that Nkrumah is probably the greatest person ever. I think that by now, if we went through the system in Ghana, we should have got people whose minds should have been orientated by now to actually realize what are the things that we should be doing for ourselves as a people. And you really don't need anybody to tell you what it is that you should do if you are community minded. And you talk about government helping people to transport cocoa from one end to the other. You know, before we set up the cocoa marketing board, cocoa was being brought to Accra, and it was being
my grandfather was one of the first board members.
And it was being shipped okay, and it was the white men or the colonial masters were getting their cocoa all right, They didn't need the government to do that for them. It was essentially something that was commercial, and it worked very well. Probably there was a good reason for the setting up of the cocoa marketing board, which was to mobilize capital, which we didn't have a lot of. But I'm saying that when people
I can
start
tell you
talking
how it
about,
started though, because
I think I know. I
yeah.
think I know. I
Okay.
don't think that you can tell me I know. I think I already know. But I'm just really saying is that there are several things that have happened. Okay. When you talk about people needing the government, I worked on a project years ago in Zimbabwe where farmers were trying to irrigate their own farm because when they finish, they will get the money. They didn't need the government to come and do it for them because they would then have to share the money. Community development and all those things happen because people have a wish, people want to do something. You mentioned Aseshi. I said the guy who set up that university didn't have to go to government to say that I want permission to set up this thing. The fact of the matter is that if our governments are not good, our entrepreneurs are also not good. And it's the same system that I try to actually talk about. That if people change their mindset about things that they want around them. For some of us, maybe it took us a lot longer for us to actually think through all these things that we're doing about international demonstration effect and then realize that, look, yeah, maybe we can do things that will satisfy us as well as other things. I mean, when people troop to, like somebody says, people are drinking the choicest champagne and drinking the fine wines and everything. We can do that. But I can tell you that the food that I'll die for is Bangkok and Momiflo. You can give me anything, take me to any damn restaurant. I can tell you that when I eat Bangkok and Momiflo, cooked like my grandfather did, which I think my wife now does justice to. I'm in high heaven. I don't need Chinese restaurant or rice or anything to make me satisfied. And I think we need to be able to change our minds ourselves and actually go through a period of introspection. That all the stuff that we do to mimic the Europe
The
and mimic
European.
the white man,
Yeah.
it's not going to help us.
Correct.
It
But
will
I don't
never
think we
help
do
us.
that.
It
That's where
will
we
not help
differ.
us.
I don't think we do because that we have to define the word we. In our
I'm talking
country,
about,
our
okay, I'll
people.
talk about myself. No,
Okay,
no, I'm
thank
talking
you.
about my
Because
people.
our
I'll,
people
I'll
don't
talk about
mimic.
myself.
Thank you. That's better.
I think we're Ghana. It's Ghana. There are
So,
people who
so, so
want to
let's,
emulate. They
so
want to
let,
emulate, and we
so
need to
let's,
stop that. We
let's go back. Let's go back to this crisis of cost of living,
yeah.
and let's try and dissect that in an objective way. Ghana has problems. My prayer is that Ghana would love those problems. And I think by saying my prayer, I'm sure that the present finance minister, who I'm told quotes the Bible anytime he gives a speech, will probably be happy that I'm talking about my prayer. My prayer is that we'll go beyond those problems that we have. But it needs to be some realism and some adjustment to the fact that we are not yet an advanced country, that we have to start slowly. We have to get there. And when we start slowly, we need to get there gradually. I talk
Okay.
to I talk to people about the fact that in my youth, I could easily walk from Accra Newtown to the ministries in my first job in 1966. I didn't need a car or anything. I walked and back to work. I'm sure if you tell somebody now, they'll be looking for Uber or something to ferry them there. But there were things that we did that we can still do. It did not mean that I was impoverished in any way. It just probably even made me healthier than it was. So I could do things and actually park. Of course, I was also affected by the international demonstration effect because I also wanted to think that, oh, I was, what's the key word? I was a cratchy. So people should see me in a different light. But I've learned, and I think that there are other people who have also learned that look, all those things was really for show and there was no substance at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay, now what is your final? Because I want us to spend about 3 minutes talking about how people can tackle the cost of living crisis. Few tips like anyway, before that, Brenya, do you have anything to say? Your final words before I
My
give
my
the tips.
final words is there we often hear from the elite class, and
Mm-hmm.
I often just have to keep quiet and listen to the elite class, because the people are not the elite class, and the people have leaders, and the people are true Africans, true Ghanaians who are working hard, and they take trotro and they walk. And although it doesn't seem like that, the way I grew up was with the people, and the elites that would come to talk to the elites that I would have to serve on a silver tray did not impress me, and they still don't. That's my final statement. The people are doing what they have to do, and they need support. My final statement. The elites do not know who the people are.
Okay, thank you. I think that we have to come back, the three of us, because we've got to a very sensitive point where the discussion was going so well. However, we haven't got more time. But I have a few tips for people for Christmas, which is start getting your groceries slowly. Make a budget. Travel savvy. And when I say that, I mean, if you don't have to go, don't go. Then you will not spend money on transport, etc. You have to take a look at your monthly income and outgoings, because this situation that we're facing is not just um, a few people. It is everybody. Everybody is going through it. You have to move your debt to one personal loan. So if you can consolidate your loans and all your debt, do it so that you're just paying a minimum amount to one person, and that's it. Be careful of your credit cards, because credit cards will just drive you into bigger debt. And cut down on, we've spoiled our children, we bought them toys, we've done all these things. That world has left. We're now in a terrible time. So cut down on the presents, cut down on your own treats. Just, give yourself treats, but be careful how you do it. Do it within your budget and make your money work harder. Don't just spend, willy-nilly, because January is coming, and then we have February all the way into April. And this people's mortgages have gone so high. I couldn't look at my letter when my mortgage came. It was just, I couldn't cope. So people, one of the other things that I know is when I speak about the UK and I weep a little bit, then I think about Ghana as well. Now, Ghana is full of hardworking people. I know, I've seen them, I've lived with them, I love them. And I think that when we're talking about Ghanaians, we need to know that moving away, not from politics, but for the person walking the street on his way to work from Alajo to wherever, from Tema, taking the bus. Is he really being looked after by the government? Is he really? These people are suffering. The people who, in this country, we're talking about 3 square meals, where in Ghana, people are just having 1 meal. So all of these things should be addressed. And Brenya's point about how, Brenya made that point that Ghanaians, the people that she knows are the people who are suffering. I think I agree with that. I think we need to look, because one of the problems is if the people in Ghana are suffering, what other people don't realize is us in the diaspora will have to socket. The word is socket in Ghana, but subsidize the people in Ghana by giving them a little bit more. Now we can't afford it anymore. We are going through hell. So we cannot afford to be subsidizing or sending money to cousin, brother, this person, that person. It's not working anymore. We ourselves, we are not doing well. So we have to think, and we have to think of a growth plan. And I think the growth plan is the next thing. I'm out of time, and I want to thank you all for coming. But this discussion has gone very quick.
Oh, I thought I was just going to put in just one word, and that word is that
Uh-huh.
as you get older, you have
Mhm.
problems with heating. So this time, the biggest challenge for some of us is whether to put our heater on or whether to go and walk outside. My doctor recommends that I should go walking in order to strengthen my legs. So I'll probably have to go on a regime of actually joining age concern so that I'm able to go to a day center and do the things that a lot of people don't do for my health reasons. And for that, I'm grateful that Rishi Sunak will provide some little bit of money for us to be able to afford that. Thank you.
I think you have a lot of faith in Richie Sunak, which I am lacking. I have to look into the whole situation again.
Thank you.
I think this conversation, as one of the listeners has said, is far from over. We need to continue. If you can do next week, we could continue it from where we left off, and we just take a little bit of excerpt so that we, pull ourselves up to speed and carry on. But this is a situation where we need to talk. But then again, we need the people to listen. The people who are concerned, the people who should be looking after us, they need to hear it. They need to hear this conversation. So we're going to find a way to deal with this. But I want to thank you again, Ade Sawyer, for coming. I want
Thank
to
you.
thank Brenya, Professor Twumasi, for also coming. And I think we've had a good discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Big respect. Ade, big respect. Kiki, big respect.
Okay. Brenya, having
Yes,
heard
my
from you
friend.
on Ochamia, since I left Ochamia,
Because